Welcome to Taking Action the Hard Way. This course is going to show you how the process of learning that you've gone through for your entire life has caused you to create feedback loops that stop you from taking action and make it hard to motivate yourself to take action. And this is something anybody who loves to learn, or I use the word here, addicted to learning, it's because an addiction, a way of thinking about an addiction is just something that solves a lot of your emotional needs, a single thing that you can do that makes it really easy to fulfill those emotional needs. And so learning can become one of those things. And the only difference between an addiction and something that's positive is that appropriate for you and for your environment? Is that appropriate for a day-to-day thing for you to be doing? So you can have a positive addiction where you're doing something to help other people and it's having a positive impact on your life and other people's lives. Or you can have a negative addiction where it's not productive, it's not good for you, it's not good for other people. So there can be positive and negative addictions, and addiction is something that's intense that meets those needs at a high level. And so being addicted to learning and what you may be calling learning right now may be a good thing, it may not be a good thing. And I'm assuming you're taking this course because you want to get into the habit of taking action more often. And one of the things that motivated me to create this course and to just improve how much action that I was taking was seeing people that weren't accelerated learners, seeing people that didn't read a ton of books, weren't using all these accelerated learning techniques, maybe weren't even that intelligent. But what they were really good at doing was going out there and making mistakes, taking action and doing things and learning from their experience. And I've said before, learning from your experience is often one of the slowest ways to learn. But there's some situations, especially when you're dealing with emergent technology, when you're dealing with things that are on the cutting edge, where there is no book, there is no guidelines for what to do and what works and what doesn't. Or the only way you're going to learn that stuff is by talking to other people that are in the field and also doing it. So that's an instance where taking action is very important, and you're not going to learn any other way. And a lot of the times, taking action really isn't about learning. It's about just doing it and being willing to take the risk and getting past that fear of failure. So the fear of failure is going to be one of the most important things we talk about, because when you create this feedback loop of being quote unquote addicted to learning, what it really means is being addicted to passive learning. And what passive learning is you buy books, you buy courses, you buy magazines and newspapers and different things, and you consume information. You go onto blogs, you have your RSS feed, you're consuming information, podcasts, you're consuming all this stuff, watching stuff on YouTube. You're consuming it all, but you're not taking notes, you're not getting spaced repetitions, you're not putting it into action. And one of the big reasons why you don't put it into action is because there's no system in place. You're not putting it on your calendar, you're not writing it down so that you can implement it later. We're going to be going in more detail over what are the different types of things you should be doing at each stage of the learning process so that it's ready to take action. Some things you can take action on right now. Some things, it's going to be a checklist of things where some of it you do it now, some you do in a month, some you do in 6 months or a year. And you're going to have a long time range to implement all that stuff. So that means you have to go store that somewhere so that you can get it back at each of those intervals. You also need to remind yourself to go back there and be getting spaced repetitions. There's other situations where it's a principle, it's something that you need to know for the rest of your life. So maybe it's a fundamental of how to code, or maybe it's about how to program, or maybe it's about how to frame a shot when you're taking pictures of something. That's something that you can't just learn once and go do one thing and then forget about it. This is something that you need to know for the rest of your life, and it's going to inform all the decisions that you make. So there's different types of information based on when you're going to take action on it, how often, and that's going to determine a lot of things, including how you take notes on it, how you store that information, how and if you memorize it, and what's the long-term life cycle of that information. It may be something that's only going to last maybe relevant for 6 months or a year or 18 months. So you have to be thinking about those things, and it has to be part of your process throughout the learning cycle. So ultimately, this course is about creating a new feedback loop. And the new feedback loop is one where instead of feeling really good when you buy that book or when you buy that course and then you end up not going through it, or instead of feeling good when you finally put that book down on the bookshelf or on your bedside table and you're like, finally I finished this book, I have so many new ideas in my head, I feel like I'm on top of the world and I've got all this new knowledge. Instead of feeling good at those points, we're going to change it so that it's not until you either have it memorized or you've taken action on those ideas that you feel good, and that you go through that feedback loop where you get that feeling of doing something good and feeling good about it, and then go back and want to do more. So learn more so that you can take more action. So it's going to be a process of destroying that old feedback loop where you feel good based on superficial things. And I talked about this extensively in the speed reading course, where we talked about, well, most people measure things by words per minute, but that's really not a good measurement. You have to be looking at things like, how fast are you constructing ideas? Are you annotating so that your spaced repetitions are going to be efficient? Because if you're not getting spaced repetitions, you lose 50% after 2 weeks and 90% after 2 months. So you're wasting your time reading if you're not planning on doing repetitions or immediately putting into action. So we're going to be talking about all this stuff, but I really want to get into your head this idea of feedback loops and this idea of how have you been learning your entire life. When you're in school, it's all about passing a test and then you can forget everything. Sometimes, yeah, it's going to be a prerequisite for another course, but in the next course, you know they're going to have review sessions. They're going to have things that help you get back up to speed because everybody's forgetting so much. It's just a part of what you have to do. So in school, you learn this very inefficient, very ineffective method of learning, where it's you learn stuff, you cram it in your head, you have that in short-term working memory for maybe a day or a few days or a week, and then after you take that test, you forget it, and you feel good because you scored well on the test. Well, you can play that game and you can get really good at that game, and that was a game that I was pretty good at when I was in school. The problem is it doesn't lead to long-term learning. It doesn't lead to long-term retention, and you're at a huge competitive disadvantage if you're forgetting 90% of what you read and what you learn after 2 months. That's extremely inefficient. So you can't get away in the long term of doing that and expect yourself to learn really fast. So that feedback loop that you built up over decades, both when you were in school and now after you've been out of school, those feedback loops of being able to, for example, go to a conference and you'll learn a bunch of stuff and you feel excited about it, but then you go back to work and it's like you forgot almost everything you learned after a couple days. It's back to normal. You maybe implement one thing. Maybe you don't really reach out to the people you met. You meant to get in touch with them, but you never ended up doing it. So it's that sort of stuff. This course is about getting you to take more action, but the only way that's going to happen is if, number one, you stop associating good feelings to those false, superficial levels of achievement, such as increasing your words per minute, or finishing another book on your bookshelf, or taking books out of the library but never reading them, or buying a book, or getting a book on your Kindle, or reading a blog, or listening to a podcast where there's no note-taking, there's no chance for spaced repetition. We have to get into your nervous system and at an emotional level where you really get that's not an accomplishment, that's nothing to be proud of, and then build this new feedback loop where it's only when you take action on ideas, it's only when you implement things or you store them in an organized way where you can retrieve that later on, or you systematically put that in a spaced repetition system so that those learnings can inform the decisions you make for the rest of your life. It's only those new things that are going to allow you to, at an emotional level, feel good. And ultimately, that feedback loop is going to control your life. That feedback loop is going to control your decisions day to day. So it's going to be about building habits, it's going to be building this new feedback loop and getting rid of and destroying that old one. So that's what you have to look forward to in this course. And if you really get that, if you really get this new feedback loop built into yourself, you're going to notice an explosion in the amount of creativity and the amount of action that you're taking, and it's going to change your life. So that's what this course is about, and I look forward to you hearing from you at the end of this course about everything that you've implemented and how it's improved your learning and your life.